You don't wake up one morning and just think, hey, I'm going to get on a flight to the middle of nowhere and I'm going to be super confident. You've done things before that. And if you're looking at me and thinking, oh, she just wrote a book and she just lived in this country and she just did that and just, please don't. I didn't start off by doing these adventure type of things. In fact, for me, my experience is wow, this took a long time. Wow, it took me a really long time to get the courage to do that because nobody was spelling out to me that all those little steps that you take along the way are actually moving towards it. I just felt like I wasn't getting to my ultimate dream thing that I wanted to do fast enough. And I thought, today I'm just going to say a few things that I did which were really early steps, which you've probably done already. So, but at least you can connect the dots and look back and say, oh, yeah, that was building courage. I was doing a little bit of a timeline type of thing. First of all, I was thinking, I remember my mom used to take me to school even when I was in my secondary school, when I was a teenager. And there was always some club or dance class after school. So it's kind of an excuse that she would pick me up there. But I remember getting the bus home from school and that being a big deal, like that being scary. And I was following a friend. So there would have been a getting the bus with a friend. And then at some point there was getting a bus on your own and being alert enough to get off the bus for your bus stop. And these are all experiences that we've done. So it's like getting the bus on your own, getting the train on your own, yeah. Getting the wrong train on your own, finding yourself at completely the wrong place. I've done that too. Early experiences. Getting a taxi alone, getting followed by a creepy taxi driver alone and figuring all those kind of things out. All these little experiences in a way persuade you to go to the next one, as in, oh, I was okay in that situation, and then move on to that. So I said in another video, I went to the cinema alone. I made the mistake of waiting outside trying to pluck up courage to go inside, and then I realized after half an hour that that probably made things look 10 times worse, and that I should have just gone in straight away because now they all thought I'd probably been stood up by somebody. I was just so embarrassed saying, like, just one ticket, please. But I wanted to see the film, and my friends had boyfriends and were doing different things. And at some point, it's, do you do the thing that you want to do, even though you're scared and you've got to pluck up the courage, or do you just stay home? I mean, that's it, isn't it? That's kind of the whole point of everything I've been talking about. Do you just have a really small life, or do you just do it a little bit at a time? You don't have to jump on an international flight. So cinema first. I think that's a really good one to do first. I know loads of people that wouldn't go to the cinema on their own, but if you can go and enjoy it and enjoy the film, I think that's a really good sign that you could probably enjoy traveling alone or doing other things alone and having these adventures. I did go to the theatre alone. I've also done music concerts alone. Music concerts are weird because I was in the standing area and other people do talk to you and they do tend to feel sorry for you. Where in the theatre, you're sitting down and you've got the people to the side of you and they say hello and stuff. But as I say, it's a music concert. You've got to dance and get. And what I found at the music concerts is that everybody was super nice and including me in everything that they were doing. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I went to see Erasure. That dates me. I loved it. I went to see Christopher. I've been to see Christopher twice. I went to see him in Birmingham, but I got it into my head that when I lived in London, I wanted to see people. I wanted to see buildings and venues. So I went to see him at the Albert Hall because I wanted to go to the Albert Hall. And then I went to see Tina Turner at Wembley, the old Wembley, before it was knocked down because it was just about to be torn down and the new Wembley be built. So again, so it's just all of these I went to on my own. And I'm sure, really, that kind of takes me up to when I was in London, I was age 30. Obviously, there were travel things before I was age 30, but I was still building courage. And okay, I want to go to Wembley and see Tina Turner. I want to do this. I want to do that. Okay, well, I don't think I'd have gone to Wembley to see Tina Turner, which was amazing, if I hadn't been to my local cinema when I was a teenager. So that's, I say, it has to be these little steps at a time, doesn't it? Well, I'm just trying to think what travel things there were. Oh, there was things like restaurants. Did I mention restaurants? Obviously, you need to go to McDonald's or somewhere like that first and do your own ordering and then order a bar for yourself. Restaurants I found was like quite a big deal in my head of this is going to be awkward. Everybody's going to stare at me. And then I realized it does help to have a book with you. And then I started wanting to test myself. And it's like, I'm not going to pick the book up. I'm going to have the book on the table. And I like writing and stuff. So I could have pen and paper. I thought, I'm not going to have those things. Nowadays, you probably just have mobile phones. Maybe this is nothing to you. I don't know. I think it's still scary to be in a restaurant thinking people are staring at you. What I said to myself was, yes, people are going to look at me and people are going to wonder what I'm doing. But they might be thinking, ooh, she could be really important. Why is she there on her own? Or didn't really mind being thought of as weird. And if they were thinking I had no friends, well, I didn't have, I didn't have the friends. My friends, as I say, my friends were popular and had boyfriends and were doing their own things. And you know what it's like when you're a young teenager and you're in your 20s. There's different priorities for your time and for your money in particular, in that all of my friends were broke, just like me. So it was, if I wanted to go to a particular theatre or show or something, a cinema, and they didn't want to go, well, that was their precious money. That was, they might only have one cinema trip in that month, and they didn't want to blow it, their money, just keeping me happy. I would say that makes it sound terrible. I completely understand. There's loads of things that I don't want to do with my friends nowadays. It's about your priorities and about your money. So for me, it was really important that I did want to see those films. I did want to go to the theatre. I did want to live that kind of life. I did want to do the travel. So I'm building up my skills with those kind of experiences and doing them on my own. At 18, I went to live in Spain, but I went with a friend. And I don't think she took the lead. She took the lead about organising the accommodation there and a lot of the things and about the travel and different things. I think she needed me to help with the momentum, but I absolutely definitely needed her to be making the plans and to make it concrete. So that wasn't a travel alone thing. But I remember when we left Spain, we'd been working there the whole summer in a nightclub. She went to Holland with a chap that she'd met, and I came back to England. Then I returned to Spain to meet up with this chap that I knew. Won't talk about him. But I remember that flight to Barcelona, then having to get from Barcelona to Girona way. I got a taxi because I was terrified. I was way too terrified to get public transport. And in hindsight, it probably would have done me a lot of good to do that part of the journey alone and build my courage. But I didn't have Spanish. I was just, but you can see how it's like one step at a time, isn't it? It's not, hey, I'm comfortable and I've got the language, it's all easy. As I said, this was all before mobile phones. When I was a lass, it was before mobile phones. So there was issues of security and safety, but it wasn't really that. Was it that? I think there's things in the future that I'd done which did become more about security and safety as a concern. But at that point, I wasn't really worried about it. I was just, In fact, I was more scared of being on a train and missing a stop or having to figure out public transport than I was of being in a taxi with just one driver. Well, male driver, probably as it was. But anyway, so I did that. I lived in Spain for a little while and I really kept my life small. I was, I feel like I regressed in terms of my confidence and my abilities. I really struggled with the language. I was too embarrassed to speak it, and didn't have a lot of the friends circle around me at that point. So I'd say I went back in confidence. And then I came back to the UK and got a job working in a bank, which was just the most ridiculous career move you could make from being wild and travelling and doing all those things to come back and work in a bank. I don't know what possessed me. That didn't last long. So then was that. What else did I do on my own? I was, when I came back from Spain and I was about 19, I was living on my own, although I had different flatmates. So obviously I had a certain confidence about I can look after myself, bills and different things like that. But again, I don't think I'd have done that if I hadn't have done some of the things that you think are small, like going to a restaurant on your own. I don't think I'd have done that if hadn't done those little things first. So I'm just trying to think of the timeline. I was in the flat. Oh, I started travelling around. I had a car by this point, and I remember doing short trips. Oh, I worked at the Belfry, which was part of a hotel group called the De Vere Hotel Group. And as a member of staff there, I could get nights at hotels within that group for a lower price, £25 a night. And I was like, okay. And I went to Lincoln and I went to Grantham on my own to stay in the hotel. I forgot about that until I was just talking. That's really funny. The day that I was due to go to Grantham, my car had been broken into, and then I said, that's it, I'm still going. And I got the train, and then I had to get a taxi. And I had a creepy taxi driver who kept trying to touch my legs. So, again, survived. It's all good. Enjoyed the weekend away. And I say these opportunities come up, and I wanted to do these things, and I could have hung around or maybe changed my mind and said, "Oh, will somebody do this with me? Or somebody do this?" But it's like, no, just go and stay and go and stay. And then I went to stay. As I say, I went to stay in Lincoln. I love Lincoln. I love Lincoln. Highly recommend. If you don't live in the UK or have never been to Lincoln, I highly recommend Lincoln. Fell in love with that, and and I think this is important. Is that although I was doing all these things alone, I was enjoying all these things alone. I was really enjoying. I was just really enjoying it. I felt comfortable speaking to strangers. Maybe I should have said before now. I left school at 16 and I worked for the next 7 years, offices, bars, shops, da da da, da whatever. So I knew how to do the small talk. Hello, where's this place? Where's that place? And ask for directions. I knew how to be polite and talk to strangers. And I think that was from the different jobs that I'd had that safe environment where I knew where I was working and I knew that there was an expected response from strangers. So that kind of built, for me, it felt like there were rules to that situation. Does that make sense? And that in that situation, they had to be polite to me and I had to be polite to them. And and that helped me feel more confident that I know how to speak and to deal with that situation. That's probably relevant too. But I'm jumping ahead. So I've started traveling in the UK. I think I'd done London trips as well. I'd definitely done. Had I done? I'd done. Well, I'd been to Wembley, hadn't I? So, oh no, that was when I lived in London. I'm getting all my timelines mixed up. If you're interested, if anybody is interested in this, I will go into more details. You just have to say which bit, and maybe this is a video that I should be doing like a list post or something like that. I really kind of pushing myself to hit record and say these are the little steps. And in a way, I was thinking it's not necessarily about travel; it's about anything. It, these small things that you kind of building confidence with. Oh, I was starting to do workshops and courses. I was interested in personal development, so I was traveling and doing that. At 24, I did a weekend in Cambridge and I applied for Cambridge University. I didn't get in, but that's another story. And then at 25, I went to university. I went to Reading University. So again, I went on my own. That was an experience. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. But and then at university, I went to there was a 3 month exchange program where you could go to Spain, and I went to Barcelona on my own. And surprisingly, I felt like there was a lot of support because I was going as a student and a kind of a representative of that university. I felt like I felt like that was easier than some of the other things that I'd done alone. But still, I remember the first day I was sharing an apartment with an older lady, and I just rented a room with her. It was a place called Padua, which is near Gracia in Barcelona. And I remember coming down the stairs, and I've got a terrible sense of direction, walking to the end of the road. And then, as I say, the metro station was just at the very, very close to where she lived. But I walked to the end of the road and I could look down one side of the road and there was definitely shops. I could look down the other side and there was shops. And I thought, I don't trust myself to walk onto this really long street with all these shops. I'm going to turn around, get my bearings and go back up to the apartment. So I say, that's what I'm talking about with micro steps. Come down the stairs, go to the end of the road. If you're worried that you're not going to find your way back again, you turn back, you come up the stairs, and then maybe you do it again the next day. Oh dear. I'm sure if you're here and you're listening to this and you've got phones and you've got maps, I am I blushing? I reckon you must be way more confident than I was. And you're looking and you're thinking, of course I can find my way back home again. I can get lost walking. I could be walking down the street of shops, go in the shop, and then come back out again, and then walk back the way I've come, not realizing it until I start to think, oh, I think I've seen some of these shops. I mean, my sense of direction is really terrible. So, again, experiences on my own. I left when I finished university. I lived with my mom again for a little while, and then I moved to London, where I shared a flat with my friend Adam. Yee. That was when I really started doing a lot of sociable things on my own. But I would tell different people that I would put an email out to groups of friends or with work and say, I'm doing this. I will meet you there if you want to do it. And it was surprising to me how many people wanted to do stuff but weren't prepared to do it on their own. Were only prepared to know if I was there already. And I went to, as I say, I went to the theatre. I went to a lot of different theatre. I went to a lot of different museums. I knew my dream was always to live in Spain, so I knew that I wasn't going to be living in London forever. So there was me and there was this Australian chap. He was just travelling all around Europe and really making the most of being in London as a base. I was doing the theatres and different, say, museums and palaces and castles just outside of London because I didn't think that I would be in London forever. But a lot of those I organised. I was prepared to do on my own. I was completely happy to be on my own. But other people joined me. I told them I would just meet them outside if they wanted to. It was all completely open. So you can probably get a picture of I am starting to feel more confident. Oh, I forgot to say, before I moved to London, my very last, let me just think. I think this was before I moved to Barcelona. Oh, am I terrible getting my timelines mixed up? Bad girl. I went to Hong Kong before the handover. I had a dream of going to Hong Kong and I was supposed to go with the boyfriend, as was. And it became clear to me the boyfriend didn't really want to go and was spending the money. So I said, I'll go on my own. And said relationship with boyfriend finished the week before I was due to go. But I was going to go on my own anyway. And that was my first long haul flight. And I remember very clearly being nervous of a long haul flight. And he actually drove me to the airport and said, I'll make sure that you're there at the airport. And also my mom and my stepdad went because that relationship had just ended. So they wanted to make sure I was okay too. And I went to Hong Kong for a week, and I very deliberately booked a hotel that I thought I'd feel safe in. I deliberately chose a hotel that had a restaurant downstairs. And I thought, if I'm frightened, if I don't feel safe, then I can eat. And I had this in my mind that I wanted to see the view of Hong Kong Island with the water. And I knew I needed to be Kowloon side. So that's what I did. I stayed that side. And in fact, it was amazing. Travelled around, got the bus. It's completely crazy. Getting the bus in another country, getting metros, getting the boat thing across, travelling around. I don't think I would go even now to remote areas. Like some people talk about these different solo travelling things. But I do remember being very conscious and saying it must be a hotel with a restaurant because at the very minimum, I can eat, I'll feel safe. And that was important to me. And that was a big deal. And I remember coming back from that trip knowing that that was a big deal for my confidence and for moving forward. So anyway, that was, as I said, that was when I was at university. I did the Hong Kong trip. I did the Barcelona, living there. I'd been at home working in Birmingham. Then I moved to London, doing lots of things, but other people joined me. What else? There's a voice in my head saying, this is a terrible way to tell people how to do something. This is my experience. I can sharpen it up, maybe, but it won't be. What I found when I try to sharpen up videos and get really concrete and try and have some sort of transcript is that I become a teacher and I don't like the way I'm sounding. So I'm trying to be. My goal is to find my people on YouTube, and I'm really hoping that people who are okay with me are okay with my waffle sometimes. London, London, London. When I was in London, what else was I doing alone? I'd have done holidays. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten. I went to Tenerife on my own. Before I went to university, I was probably 21 or something like that. I was working for my dad. My dad had a candle factory, and I was working in the offices, and I was miserable. And I said, oh, I really need a holiday. And he said, I'll pay for a holiday for you on one condition, and that's that you don't come back to work for me. That was the condition. And he goes, but you won't. You don't have the courage. You won't do that. And I thought, I really do have the courage. So I went to Tenerife. That was in my 20s. Oh my goodness. It's weird now to think of all these different things and see how the pieces fit together. I know I've done them in a jumbled way. Apologies. Ugh. Maybe somebody who likes this video could be really kind and say, let me straighten out her timeline because she's rubbish at telling it. Tenerife holidays, all those things. When I was in London, I went. I decided that I wanted to work overseas. I'd always wanted to be in Spain, but I ended up getting desperate, and I went. I went to Prague for an interview, and then I went to Madrid for an interview, and I got the job in Madrid. So again, I'm now bouncing around and doing this different travel. And I got the job in Madrid and moved to Madrid and had lived in a hostel, whatever, there. And from there, obviously, I was working and living in Madrid, and you have to do all your paperwork and stuff. It's quite different living in a country. It's quite a big jump in terms of confidence and your skills level to live there and set yourself up and get your doctors and do all of that than just traveling. So that was a stretch, and I did need help for that. And thankfully, I had a job so people could help me. Then I had my first connecting long haul flight. I went to Australia, and I have a feeling I can't remember where I connected through, but I remember it being my first connecting long haul. and this was another Tony Robbins course that I was doing over there. And as I say, I remember it being a big deal, and I remember thinking I could get lost in the airport and miss the flight. I was thinking a lot of things could go wrong. I wasn't particularly concerned about Australia because I thought that would be a safe place. And I booked my accommodation in Australia. I ended up doing Sydney, Brisbane, and Townsville. Did three different stops. So there was flights around Australia. In Sydney, I stayed in a hostel, which I'd never done before, and shared a bedroom because I'd never done it. I'd never done the sort of solo travel hostel things, and I wanted to experience it, see what it would be like. That was very nice. Still in touch with somebody that I met there. Brisbane, loved. Flew up to Townsville, great. Just had a fabulous time. But like I say, this is another one that when I got back to Madrid, I knew that opened my world even more. That if I was able to do connecting long haul flights on my own, then really there was a lot of things that were possible for me. But I still get nervous. I've still had experiences in my life to be wary of certain situations. So yeah, so done Australia, done Madrid. When I was in Madrid, I met my husband. So in a way, a lot of my travel was kind of with him. Then we moved to Barcelona. We then moved back to the UK. But again, I needed to be able to travel on my own because if he was working, I need to be able to go back to the UK, come back to Spain. But starts to become more and more familiar. But I did know that he was there, or my mum was in the UK meeting me. Then there was. Then we moved to Kazakhstan, and that was a big deal. And that felt like a scary move again. But again, we had people there through his work to help us settle, and I needed to be comfortable bouncing around from Kazakhstan and back and doing different things. And as whilst we were there, we started the adoption process for our daughter, who's from Ethiopia. So we needed to be able to get to Ethiopia, and I needed to be able to travel there. Paperwork, we needed to go to Singapore, and I also travelled to Turkey. So this is me bouncing around on different flights. And I do remember, although it was earlier before this, I do remember I turned up at an airport once and had got the wrong day. And it's like, okay, this whole travelling on my alone is starting to feel a little too casual. I need to be a little bit sharper and more focused because I can't keep turning up on the wrong day. So it's so weird to think that I was so worried about getting the bus home from school, and then this is me bouncing around on flights. When I was working in Madrid, one of my jobs was to fly around Madrid. So I was completely comfortable flying around Madrid, and I did not have the language, and I was too shy to speak. So hence I didn't have the language because I wouldn't speak. So yeah, so then we're in Kazakhstan. I'm traveling with Ethiopia. We moved to Myanmar, and for Myanmar you have to go from the UK you have to go via Bangkok, or my brother at that time lived in Chiang Mai in Thailand. So and then I was traveling with my daughter, and she was on an Ethiopian. Although we'd had the adoption completed, she was still on an Ethiopian passport, and I was on a British passport, which just confuses everything about traveling and visas and stuff like that. But if you've got this far in my story and you're wondering about traveling yourself, this is not step one. I hope you can hear that. I hope you hear that this is years and years of doing the little things and feeling quite proud of myself that I'd done those little things. I remember doing the Tenerife holiday, and there was a guy who worked there, and he was nudging the person he was with, and he was like, "That's the one I was telling you about. She's the one who's on her own." And you're like, "Yeah." My choice was stay home, do nothing, or come on my own. So that's what my choice was. And maybe for lots of other people, maybe I'm odd. Maybe lots of other people have different friends to travel and to do things all the time. But for me, my decision was I can have a holiday on my own, or I can not have a holiday. That's it. That was what my choice was. So yeah, so I've been traveling Myanmar, came back to the UK. There was a lot of problems with paperwork and things to do with the adoption, which again, if people want to know, I can talk about, but I don't know if I'm going way off track, whether my stuff is interesting. And my husband had a job in Saudi Arabia. My daughter and I were due to go, and the visas, we just couldn't sort it out. So we ended up staying in the UK. We travelled to Turkey to meet him for a holiday. And although I wasn't travelling alone, I was travelling with my daughter. My daughter was 3 at that time. So it's not like you've got an adult. In fact, it's more pressure. I would say that's another step up too of I can take care of another human being and I can make sure that she's okay. Yeah. So I'd say that's a lot of the travelling and stuff that I've done. I've rattled through those and I've messed up the timeline if you've got this far. I'm wondering, is that what you're curious? I was thinking this YouTube channel would be to help people feel more fulfilled. And I was thinking about creating and stuff. And yet the word creator, I don't resonate with that at all. And so I wanted to reach people that also just felt a little bit off about that they wanted to do more things, but they were scared of doing more things. And sometimes maybe they didn't know what the new things were, but they knew that they wanted to do something. That's who I'm trying to reach. I can't believe what a load of nonsense I've just been talking. How long? Over half an hour of complete nonsense. Love you. Let me know if you've got any questions. Bye.